Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by my co-host, Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, buddy. How are you?
We are just enjoying our time here. Bree and I are both coming off of kind of hard days, as I was saying before. I got a speeding ticket today. It's not great, but you have those days when you're just like, okay, so this thing happened at the beginning and I just need to get through it, right?
100%. Yeah.
And I haven't gotten a speeding ticket for 20 years. Like, it's been a while.
Well, and that's been a topic of conversation in our household because we're teaching, my oldest to drive. And and in the beginning, he was so slow. And we would get out on the roads. We'd be like, hey, you got to at least be with the flow of traffic. Now I catch him speeding on the main road right by my house that, Val Vista. I'm like, slow down, dude. I was like, this is not when you want to get a speeding ticket. You don't even have a license yet.
Yeah.
And I used to get a ton of speeding tickets when I was younger. Like, I probably have had at least 15 speeding tickets in my past. Oh, yeah.
I only got
easy.
one, and it was driving back from Las Vegas in college, and I was going real fast, like 106 miles per hour fast. Yeah,
Holy
it was real fast.
cow.
And the cop who pulled me over was like, I should be taking you to jail right now. This is criminal speed. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. I actually had to just use the bathroom. I had to pee.
Oh my God.
I didn't think I would get caught. Like,
was it just you? Was there anybody else in the car?
Me and 3 friends, and we were driving actually my friend's mom's car. So that was a whole thing. I felt so stupid because I did it because I thought I could get away with it because it was like just empty roads, like empty. Right. I wasn't passing anyone. There was like no one else there except the cop who
was hiding somewhere. I would have peed myself probably right when I saw him. I'd be like, okay, it's done. It's done.
That one stayed on my record for so long, and I haven't actually gotten another speeding ticket since that one. And
wow.
So this morning when I was pulling, I'm like, I see it in the rearview mirror. I'm like, is it pulling me over? I was just so beside myself. And it was because it was a street, one of those streets that looks like it should be 35 to 40 miles per hour, having no houses on it whatsoever. And it was 25, and he was there in an unmarked car. I just wasn't paying attention to the speed limit sign, and I was going like 41. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, you know me, I'm always late. So is it really shocking that I've had 15 speeding tickets in my life? I mean, come on. Really? I haven't gotten any in a while out here. I used to get them a lot because the other thing too is, so maybe this is another factor. I drove a lot. I was a home visitor. So I had pediatric and home therapy. So I was in my car 5 days a week for, all day long. So yeah, it was a lot of driving. I got a lot of tickets, but I will say at the end, I managed to talk myself out of a lot. I have a talent. Like
I need that talent.
Our guest says later in the interview, he has a very particular set of skills. I have a very particular set of skills.
I need those skills. Well, our guest today is Dave Hollis, who we are very excited to interview. Dave Hollis is an author. He is a podcast host and an entrepreneur, and he helps small business owners as an integrator consultant right now. He's a busy dad to 4 kids, ages 15, 14, 10, and 5, and has been a foster parent also many times over. And he just released a new children's book called Here's to Your Dreams, which is super cute. We recommend you go get it. So we hope you enjoy our interview with Dave Hollis. It's very nice to meet you.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, Bree.
Where
are you guys located?
Here in Phoenix. We're in Gilbert.
Mm-hmm. Gilbert?
Yep.
Gilbert.
I go to Gilbert all the time.
Oh,
Yay!
yeah?
Yeah. I heard, I thought that I had heard that you were out here in Phoenix sometimes.
Heidi lives in Gilbert. So,
I
go see the Heidi crew all the time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. She lives in Gilbert because I saw on her Instagram an event she did, and I was trying to figure out the location of the event because I know she's here. And I want to say it's in downtown Chandler. It's like the Bricks or something. Was I right?
I think so.
Okay. I'm like, yes, I know my event venues, my locations. Well, that's cool. Where are you now?
I'm in Austin, well, outside of Austin, Texas, a little place called Dripping Springs, 45 minutes away. Yeah.
Okay.
Austin's on my bucket list. City limits.
Good spot. It's a good spot. Good music, good people, good vibe.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you've lived there now for a couple years. You moved out a few years ago.
Moved in 2018. So what is that? 4 years, 4.5 years? Yeah.
And you moved from where I was before in LA, I know, because you worked for Disney in sales.
Yeah.
And I take special note of that because I also worked in the entertainment industry as well. I worked for Endeavor. I was an assistant to a talent agent. And so like, I'm always like looking at entertainment people and I'm like, it's such a small world,
right?
Like, everybody who comes out of entertainment.
It is weird. I mean, as much as like, man, so much of my identity was wrapped up in working at Disney. I'm not like, I don't miss it. I'm happy for the people that are still there. But like when the recent, change of guard, I had reported directly to Bob Chapek for 10 years, worked obviously with Bob Iger. Now that Iger's back in as CEO, I got so many texts from people. And I'm like, you have mistaken me as someone who is still either working in the company or is interested in coming back. I love that part of my life. It was so amazing. And also, I love this part of my life. Thank you very much. It's nice to not have to worry about who's running the organization.
Yeah. No, I especially love your story because you've really like transformed yourself multiple times, careers, multiple passions, and just going after what's in front of you at the time. Because I grew up in a household where my parents have had the same job for 35, 40 years. And that's what, I kind of entered the workforce in thinking I'd be at the same job for 30, 40 years. And it's just not, it doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it is the case.
It's like, I know I worked really, really, really hard for 20 years in entertainment. So like there was a long period of time where I thought I was climbing this mountain for a certain destination, only to realize that that wasn't the mountain that I was meant to climb for my entire life. And now some of that hard work like created a security that allowed me to take something of a chance and jump away from everything I'd ever known. But now that I've been for these last, 4 years working inside of a space that I could have never, ever imagined, there is somewhat of a kind of choose your own adventure nature to it because it's entrepreneurial, but it also is the things that are going to connect most with an audience or the things that are going to be most effective as like resources or tools, whatever, are most often going to be connected to the things I have the most passion for or I'm using or going through in my real life. And so I've kind of just let my own growth journey dictate what it is that I work on or what I create. And I don't know, there's privilege in that. There's excitement in that. It's a very cool thing.
Kind of gravitating toward what you're interested at the time, would you say?
Oh, for sure. It's like I am in the midst of working on a next book, and the reality of like how to approach working on it was, what's the book that I need to read myself in this stage of my journey? Like what, prescription would I give myself? And like, it ends up being very specific to the things that I'm working through in identity or the things I'm working through in self-love or the things that I'm working through in all of it. But there's also just like radical relatability that ends up existing because we're all kind of the same as much as we've had all these different experiences. And the only thing you can do is like tap into something that you are intimately involved in your life at that time. And the more that you're, willing to be vulnerable, safely vulnerable, I guess, but like vulnerable in, what you're going through and what what tools you're using to try and continue to move forward. I don't know. It seems like it works. It's the only thing that I would know how to write though,
Yeah, writing what you're going through at the time. I read Built Through Courage, and I loved how you started the book with saying that you thought 2020 was going to be your best year ever. And I thought that was incredibly relatable to you for so many reasons for people who went into it.
Yep.
And it just created this like path of change. And something I know that parents listening to us have is that a lot of times when they're asked, what's your goal? Like, what are you working on? What excites you? They have no idea because their day-to-day is so focused on taking care of the kids and making sure everybody else has what they need that they really have no time to focus on themselves. Have you ever been in that stage of life where you didn't know what direction to go into next?
I fall into that all the time. Like, I'm not even sure that I'm totally out of that, at any point in time, because I can get super motivated. I can see very clearly a vision of either what I'd like to accomplish or where I'd like to go. And then life happens and the chaos and craziness of 4 kids happens. And it can, having you have to slow down or take your eye off that goal, every once in a while find you like, wait a second, what am I going for? What is most important? Like there's always going to be something of opposition between this vision of where you'd hope to go and the responsibilities that you have to show up well for your kids and the way that you still need to take care of yourself and the way that you might be in a relationship with another person. And those things always tugging on themselves have me coming back to a question of how I want my life to feel. Like, how do I want to feel the day? How do I want to feel the week? Is there a way that I can create something of lifestyle goals that, in having created those lifestyle goals, allow my professional pursuits and my relational pursuits and the way I want to be the kind of dad I hope to be to my kids fall into the lifestyle that I'm talking about, as opposed to it just being about, reaching this big goal on the professional side. I think part of it too, I've had a couple of different careers and I've had some really cool professional success. But I think when I was growing up, I thought that happiness or fulfillment or being lovable or whatever it was going to be accessed at the destination when the goal was achieved, the title was achieved, the dollar amount in the bank account was achieved. And none of the times where any kind of achievement happened was there some magic wand that immediately made me feel different about myself. I maybe had some pride for hitting the goal, but it wasn't like, oh, that's now when all of a sudden, boom, I love myself in a way that I hadn't loved myself before. And so the work I've had to do is just be super intentional about creating an appreciation for the process being the thing that you have to fall in love with rather than the destination.
That is such a good point. Like, I get caught into that thinking too.
Like almost lost in like where they're headed. Just remember that you're only ever where you are. Like, just like be present where your feet are. Appreciate that the things that you're going through are hopefully preparing you for whatever ends up coming next. And that this process is where life happens and where fulfillment happens and where, I don't know, like destiny, there's a term for it, like destination envy or destination, whatever it is. But it's not about getting necessarily to the goal. And I think you should have goals and I think you should push to achieve them. It's about enjoying the process along the way. It's about enjoying the journey. Even if you feel lost at times, you're still on the journey and it's okay as long as there's an appreciation for you being where you're supposed to be and learning what you're supposed to learn at this point in time.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point because that is something that I am working on in my own life, like not thinking that it's the destination I get to versus the process. It's a really hard mind shift to take. Have you read the book, The Gap and the Gain?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, I totally recommend this book. So it's all, Bree's like, she talks about this book all the time. My goodness.
Yeah, I think we have a whole episode about it actually, but go on.
Maybe we do. So it's thinking about when you usually think about something and you set a goal, you'll achieve a certain level in the goal and you'll compare that level that you reached to this ideal and you'll be unhappy because you're thinking right here in the gap. And where you should be thinking is measuring your progress versus 0 from where you started. And that's the gain. And that part of thinking has totally changed my positivity, my outlook, and being able to stay in the moment so much more.
So good. I just recently was watching, there was a TED Talk that somebody sent me, and it was about the power of starting with a positive thought over a negative thought in any situation. It reminds me of what you're talking about. But when we are introduced as humans with the failure rate versus the success rate, or if we're introduced with how difficult something might be instead of the number of people who've actually achieved it, our brain almost immediately discounts that it's an even possible thing for us because of this revelation that other people haven't succeeded. Where on the other side, when you're able to see those that have succeeded and those who have, achieved this thing first, your brain attaches to the thing, oh, it's possible. So it's possible for me. And so like it's the gap versus gain. It's the same kind of thing. If you're focused on the gap, you're in trouble. There'll be no traction, momentum, whatever it might be. If you're focused on the bad thing that can happen, you'll search for the evidence to back up your hypothesis that something bad's going to happen. Whereas if you're looking for the good or believe that the good will happen, you'll find that same evidence too. It's tough because we're humans.
It's energy sucking too. And
Totally.
It's so funny because in this book, they're also like, well, you also can't like think that you're going to stay in the gain forever because that's idealistic thinking in the gap. So just trying and going towards that goal of thinking more gain thinking, which really brings us to transferring this knowledge to our kids. And that's something I love what you've done in Tea Time with Noah. It was such a cute story. And okay, first of all, I have to address the nautical theme because I notice it in every single one of your works. And you also have a tattoo, right? That has like a boat on it? What does your tattoo say? Like,
my tattoo says, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships were built for." I'm not good on boats. I don't even know how I got into the nautical theme. But to be honest, I mean, I got this tattoo just as I was leaving this long corporate identity, this long corporate work for whatever the new was going to be. And it was terrifying because I was very familiar with the work that I was doing and I was doing it well. And the decision to leave didn't make sense to almost anyone who I told. And I had to remind myself that just because I'm, going into something new, that new is, of course, going to be the thing that's going to help me grow and help me learn and help me, become this better, different version of me. And the thing I think we all as humans end up having some connection to is comfort and predictability and the idea of the kind of nautical theme, the harbor, right? A ship is actually meant to be out on the choppy seas. It was built to handle the choppy waters. By keeping it docked in the harbor, you're underutilizing the intention of its creation. And so I want to be maximally used for all of what I've been designed for. And that means pushing myself into super uncomfortable things and being okay with the chop and the rock and maybe even getting sick in the midst of all of it. But I have to remind myself all the time because growth is great, except it's hard. And growth is great, except it, can be scary and trigger a whole host of fear and a ton of core wounds and whatever else.
And it doesn't always succeed. Like something that I appreciated you were so vulnerable about is that when you left Disney and you teamed up with Rachel to do her company, that you were at the end, you're like, well, this wasn't really my dream. This was someone else's dream. And I watched you guys all the way through that. I was in the movie theater watching that Rise movie. Like that was like... So like seeing that progression and now seeing you in this new thing and then writing a book for your daughter. Did she have any input in the book when you were writing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the genesis of the book, like when I wrote the first of my books, Get Out of Your Own Way, I had that moment where I was like, gosh, the idea that I even have to write a personal development book suggests that there is something wrong with the way that we are being developed. At some point in time, the world has some lies. It sells them to us. We believe them instead of our own truths. And then we need books or conferences or something to remind us of who we are, to remind us of our truth. And so in that window of writing was like, God, is there some way that I could start early with my daughter and reinforce some of these ideas for grownups, but in language that a young person can understand? And so we started shooting the series. It was, to be honest, it was just a really fun thing that we were already doing. And it was great to get her ridiculous and awesome reactions on camera. And as time went by, the publisher reached out and was like, hey, what do you think about making a kid's book where you do the same kind of thing, teaching people with fun and adventure? It doesn't taste like medicine, but there is something good in a message. And I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Well, it's been a couple of years. So like from the very beginning, we get sketches from different, illustrators, and then we got to kind of narrow down which ones we like. And then we started writing, and I'm telling the story, and she's feeding into what she thinks what's the turn here? What's the turn there? And in a world where, like, man, I was hoping that she would be excited about working on a project together. She's been wildly more excited than I could have ever expected. Like us getting
awesome.
The first time and her seeing herself illustrated on the cover of a book. That's like one of the most magical things I think I've ever captured on film. It was so cool.
Well, I mean, let's just say, like, how many kids get to have that?
True.
People in general, but right there. And kids like, I'm on a book. That's me. That's me. You're not on a book? I thought everybody went on a book when they were younger, right?
I know.
But so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like the story about encountering self-doubt, because I mean, I think that's something that we need to talk more with about kids, because there's this mindset, especially when you're a high achiever, or if you're a child who has gotten praise for being a high achiever, that you never want to be in that situation where it's possible for you to fail. And it takes you, like, it goes into adulthood with you. So have you seen your kids deal with self-doubt, and how have you as a parent kind of approached that?
I mean, of course I have, because they are humans like everybody else is human, and every human has self-doubt. The really interesting thing in real time is that, like, Noah is so strong-willed. She is so confident. She is so sure of herself that when we get a phone call from the school and it's like, Noah has been really standing up for herself. I'm like, oh, good girl. That's awesome. They're like, well, and maybe crossing a couple of boundaries in self-defense, and maybe being a first mover in invading personal space.
Got to push those boundaries to know where the limits are, right?
On the one hand, I don't want in any way to like put any shade over the light. Like, I know she's just got so much light, and also she needs to keep her hands to herself. But when it comes to overcoming self-doubt, I can tell them a whole host of things. The thing I'm trying to do most is model how I also, as a person, have self-doubt. And I'm putting myself into situations that force me to confront it and be humbled at times by a lack of experience, whatever it might be. So the example I'll give in real time, about a month ago, I did a physique competition.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, what are we even doing here? I'm not sure that I would ever have seen myself standing on the stage, oiled up with a bunch of tanner, flexing muscles. And yet I did it. And if I had known what I was getting into, to be honest, I don't even know if I would have, because it was one of the most discipline necessary. Like, I worked so hard to do this thing, but I got there and I went backstage, and it was very, very apparent that the people who were entering this competition had been at it for considerably longer period of time than the 6 months that I had been at it. Mm-hmm. And so, I had a lot of self-doubt backstage. I had a lot of self-doubt going into the competition. My kids were witness to it. But I also flew my kids to the competition so that they could see me standing on stage, as it turns out, with 11 other competitors inside of my class. And as much as they didn't give out a last place, I'm pretty sure I got last place. I'm comfortable suggesting that I got last place. And it had no effect on the way that I felt pride for the work that I put in. It had no effect on the way that I was proud of confronting the fear of walking in there, or the way that walking into the auditorium with 600 people sitting in the stand, I was like, what are all these people doing here? I thought we were doing a small show. This is crazy. And so modeling a little bit of like, hey, I'm going to do scary things. I'm going to try, whether it's a physical thing or something new in my professional life, whatever it might be. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm nervous about it, and I might have some doubt about it. But the only way that I'm going to create a little more confidence is by confronting that fear, maybe even failing, maybe getting last place in something, maybe being humbled by it. But through that experience, learning in a way that now the next time I want to do a fitness competition, or the next time I want to do anything, I can say, oh yeah, it wasn't as bad as I was worried it would be. I learned all these things that I would not have otherwise learned. And now, armed with that information, I'm much more confident going into the next thing that is new, because I have evidence that I can handle doing new things. I have evidence that I can survive failing. I have evidence that I can put myself out there and not die. All right, let's go.
I love it. And I think it's like the best way to teach kids is through the experiences of parents and what parents like put forth. I think it's Ed Milet who said something like the worst thing you could do as a parent is not like realize your true potential, because you're showing them what's possible. Yeah. And It's so interesting because I try to make myself vulnerable in those situations too, but like mine are more relationship based. I'm very shy and I don't like confrontation or conflict whatsoever. So I find myself narrating my text messages that I'm writing with my kids when I have those conversations, and I'm telling them about it so that they feel that conflict's normal in relationships, like something like I had trouble with when I was like younger. But
Right.
it's an
The way to
awesome
do it.
thing. Yeah. So what are you doing next? What is exciting you right now?
Well, I mean, I have turned my professional focus for the last handful of months actually into a thing that I have really enjoyed, but that is totally different than what I've been working on the last couple of years. And that is small business consulting, for lack of a better word. In every organization, there needs to be two kinds of people if the organization is going to really fully meet its potential. There's a great book called Rocket Fuel that talks about this.
I know
A
it.
visionary and an integrator. And as much as I think I have some vision, I have a super set of skills like Liam Neeson around figuring out the how to someone else casting a vision for the what. And so finding these different people who've got great ideas, who've got a lot of vision, but don't necessarily know how to fully, totally implement that idea or make it profitable or organize the team or whatever it might be. I've been spending time in these smaller companies or personality-based businesses, smaller businesses, trying to work with people who are trying to make an impact on this world. And I've got four nice for-profit clients, two nice pro bono nonprofit organizations that I get to work with. And it still gives me time to do some writing, still gives me time to work on the podcast. And it's been great.
That is quite, well, I guess it's not quite the shift from what you did before because you had all that business experience and it's like the next kind of iteration and change.
Also true. Yeah. It's weird because the last couple of years, there's just been so much in life. And there are components of this bizarrely semi-public version of what my life has become that I'm not sure that I love. I mean, I like it in some ways, and it hasn't necessarily been, it's been a trigger sometimes for some of the stuff that I don't necessarily like in terms of how I feel about myself or the way that I have been tempted historically to drink or something like that. And I'm like, well, you may have identified the cause of some of the pain that's existed in your life. You get a choice. You want to continue to spend as much time publicly and have some of that pain present, or do you want to pursue a little bit more of a private life and enjoy the things that exist, in real time? So I've stepped back quite a bit from social, and I can't say that I miss it that much. And it doesn't mean that I might not go back. It's like I'll spend time there when I feel like it, and I just don't feel like it that often right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't imagine having my life be as public as yours has for the past 2 years. And I did notice the time when you said that you were stepping back from social media, because I feel like everything out there and everyone has an opinion on it and nobody has the whole story anytime.
No.
So like, why subject yourself to it exactly?
Yeah. When it feels fun, when it feels right, when it feels like it adds to my life, absolutely. If it doesn't, I don't need to, and that's okay.
And that's another great lesson for our kids, right? That because I mean, they're growing up in a whole different life than we did. Social media, all this technology came about for most of us in our age group, like after a little while. We had the times without it, and then now our kids have it all the time. It's good for them to be able to see that those kind of healthy boundaries, but that you can still use it in a positive way.
Yeah, I'm terrified of my kids accessing social media, to be honest. Like they don't have, I have a 15, 14, 10, and 5-year-old, and none of them have access to social media and may not, to be honest, until they've left our homes. I don't know.
But still, they see you modeling these healthy boundaries. Like that's the important part. Like you were already talking about being brave and showing them all these things. You're modeling it for them so they have something to reflect back upon and be like, okay, good. This worked. So
that's a good one. A good point. I got to be even more consistent in modeling.
The social media thing is hard with kids. My daughter wanted Instagram for the longest time, and the only way she negotiated it was she started just a baking Instagram where she put her like baking creations on it. And I see it more as a mentoring standpoint. I want her to be on it and I want to have connection to her account and I want to see what's going on it. I'm also friends with all of her friends on Instagram. They might block me, so I might not see much of it. I don't think they do. I see a lot, but like, they should be blocking me more.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I think back to when I was in junior high or high school, like it was already hard enough feeling like I was good enough or that I was accepted in certain circles. I can't even imagine subjecting yourself to social media in the way that it could accelerate any of the insecurity or any of the worry or any of the anxiety. Oh, pass.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
And then
for me.
seeing when your friends are hanging out without you, I would think that would be a killer. That would be a total killer for me in high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has been wonderful chatting with you and getting to know you, Dave. And I'm very excited to see what you do next and what you put out there. And
thank you, Joanne. Thanks, Bree. I really appreciate you guys. This is fun.
Well, thank you so much. And we have a link to all the books we've been talking about. I've been keeping my nice little list over here. So we will have links to all of that in our show notes.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, you.
Guys.
Thank you. I enjoy talking with Dave and bringing up like all the self-development stuff because I feel there's so few people I can nerd out with about self-development.
We'll admit on this podcast, I just kind of sat there quietly quite a bit. I was like, okay.
I love it. And I love like all the thinking behind it and everything and how to teach it to our kids because it has made such a difference in my own life to like kind of switch the way I think about things. And it's also strategies they do teach you when you go into therapy. And I think that more people don't necessarily have to go in. They shouldn't have to go into therapy to learn the strategies is what I'm saying.
True. Yeah.
Therapy is a great thing, but these strategies are beneficial wherever. Wherever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the most interesting part about the interview was at the end. So like was at the end. So like we're using this. You guys have heard.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the most interesting part of the interview.
Funny part, the funniest part. It was funny to me because it was so weird. So like, okay, so because we talk about our tech stuff all the time. You're right. It wasn't the most interesting, but it was interesting to Bree on the podcast producer side. So we are using our new this new platform so we can have these lovely videos for you all here in Podcast Land. And it wouldn't upload. It was taking forever to upload. We were on there for like we're just
good 20 minutes waiting for it to upload. And like Dave had to leave. So it was just like empty room.
He's like, I gotta go. I'm just gonna leave this right here. I'll leave the computer open. And I'm like, oh, so embarrassed. I'm like, I hope you don't think we're like trying to come up with a way to stay on. Like we just need your files so we can have the sound from this interview.
We just need your files. Give us
I know.
files.
That sounds like so other sneaky to it. Like
no, that's what we do in podcast land. We're like we talk about files and downloads and mics and internet connection a lot.
And learning how to turn on the mic. All those
and turn on the mic. That was funny though yesterday.
Yeah.
You want to share that?
We were late for a podcast interview yesterday because Bree does not apparently know where the on-off switch is. And not only do I not know where it is, like Joanne asked 3 times, well, is your mic on? And I'm like, yes, it's on. Then I look at it closer and like I was looking at the O and I'm like, O in for on. It's also how you spell off. O F. So the O was not what I thought the O was for. Anyway.
It happens.
Lessons learned.
Yeah.
Lessons learned.
Remember, the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.